2024, thriller blockbuster Azrael. The movie has grossed $48 million in its opening week, with a strong 8.7 rating in North America. The story takes place in an alternate universe. In the not-too-distant future, in 2025, Earth erupted in World War III. After a series of nuclear strikes, human civilization was wiped out. However, more dangerous than the impending apocalypse is the threat posed by mutated humans, deformed by radiation, and the terrifying darkness of human nature. These mutated humans are completely blackened, with an intense thirst for blood. The moment they catch the scent of blood, they swarm toward it. Survivors refer to these mutated humans as monsters. Azrael, a young girl, is a wanderer in the post-apocalyptic world. A few days ago, Azrael and her boyfriend Keenan joined a survivor camp, hoping to live a peaceful life. But as soon as they arrived, they were tied up and locked in a dark room. Fortunately, Keenan was quick-witted. The two managed to escape under the cover of night and fled into the forest. Just when Azrael and Keenan thought they were safe, strange bird calls echoed through the forest. Upon hearing the bird calls, Keenan hurriedly took Azrael and hid in a corner. The bird calls were a signal used by the camp's guards to communicate, meaning they had been discovered. To buy Azrael some time, Keenan decided to lead the pursuers away. The two agreed to meet by the creek at the back of the mountain. With Keenan drawing the attention of the guards, Azrael ran in the opposite direction. However, she didn't get far before encountering a man. Just as Azrael was about to turn around, she found her escape route blocked. In the struggle, Azrael discovered that Keenan had also been captured. They were thrown into the back of a car and taken back to the camp. When Azrael opened her eyes again, she found herself on an open field. Two men roughly tied her to a chair. Josephine pulled out a knife and slashed Azrael's thigh. As her blood flowed, the growls of monsters echoed from the forest. Satisfied that the monsters were drawn out, Josephine hurriedly took her men and hid on a nearby hill. Soon, a monster appeared in the forest. Seeing the monster approach, Azrael struggled fiercely and, in the process, accidentally broke the armrest of the chair. Just as she was about to untie herself, the men on the hill noticed her attempt to escape. They rushed over to subdue Azrael, hoping to buy more time for the monster to arrive. In the chaos, Azrael used the broken armrest to stab one of the men. Before Azrael could process what had happened, the wounded man disappeared from view. Shocked by the terrifying sight, Azrael didn't dare linger. She quickly untied herself and fled the scene. Meanwhile, on the hill, Josephine and the others still had no idea that Azrael had escaped. When they heard a scream, they saw the monster dragging one of their own into the forest. Meanwhile, Azrael, having narrowly escaped, hid in a ruin. As she was tending to her wounds, a monster, drawn by the smell of blood, appeared behind her. Thankfully, Azrael reacted quickly. She covered her wound and hid in a corner. Since the monster was blind and relied only on scent to find its prey, it soon lost its way and wandered off. After the monster left, Azrael sighed in relief. She quickly treated her wound before sneaking back into the camp to rescue her boyfriend, Keenan. Azrael crawled through the hole she escaped from the night before. However, when she searched the camp, she couldn't find Keenan, and all the other survivors were gone. Had Keenan already been sacrificed? Just as Azrael was wondering, she saw Josephine walk into a small wooden house in the distance. Azrael thought Keenan might be inside, so she quietly followed. But when she got closer, she discovered the wooden house was actually a church. The survivors had gathered there, their hands clasped in prayer. A woman in a white robe was leading the ceremony. Strange murals adorned the walls of the church. When Josephine returned, the woman stopped the prayer, and the survivors left the church. From the floor above, Azrael eavesdropped on their conversation and learned that the woman in the white robe was named Miriam, the true leader of the camp. The survivors in the camp were, in fact, fanatical worshippers of the monsters. They had been recruiting survivors under the guise of offering help, only to capture and sacrifice them to the monsters in the forest. Upon hearing that Azrael had escaped, Miriam became furious and ordered Josephine to send people to capture her. At this moment, Azrael finally understood the true nature of the camp. She carefully crawled backward, trying to find a way out. However, while crawling, she accidentally knocked into a nearby pillar. Hearing the noise, Azrael held her breath, hoping Miriam and Josephine hadn't noticed her. Just when Azrael thought she was safe, Josephine suddenly appeared behind her. Josephine grabbed Azrael by the neck. In a panic, Azrael kicked Josephine away, and before she could get back up, Azrael rushed outside. As soon as she broke out of the camp, the alarm sounded. Josephine had triggered the alarm, signaling the presence of an intruder. The survivors were immediately on high alert. With more and more people gathering around, Azrael had no choice but to forcefully tear through the barbed wire and escape the camp. Now out of the camp, Azrael didn't dare stop. She sprinted deep into the forest. Not sure how long she had run, Azrael finally stopped to rest, exhausted, but before she could catch her breath, she felt a chill down her spine. Looking back, she saw a monster in the forest. It turned out that when she broke through the barbed wire, her hand was scratched, and the smell of blood had attracted the monster. Seeing the monster, Azrael ran for her life. Luckily, the monster was blind and could only track by scent. Azrael took advantage of the uneven terrain to successfully lose the monster. Once she was sure she was safe, Azrael used her clothes to bandage her wound. Just then, Azrael noticed a faint light in the distance. She cautiously approached and was shocked to see Keenan sitting by a tree, warming himself by a fire. Azrael thought Keenan had escaped the camp, so she excitedly ran toward him. But just as she got closer, her foot caught on a trap. The foolish Azrael falls right into the trap. A man raised his shotgun, ready to knock Azrael unconscious, but before he could act, a strange noise came from the forest. Before he could react, a monster pounced on him. It turned out that Azrael's earlier struggles had reopened her wound, and the scent of blood had attracted the monster. As the man was overwhelmed by the creature, Azrael scrambled up a tree to escape. In no time, the man was dragged into the forest by the monster. Azrael tried to take the opportunity to rescue Keenan, but another monster suddenly appeared from the forest. Without hesitation, the monster killed Keenan and then turned its attention to Azrael. In a desperate move, Azrael used the rope in her hand to strangle the monster's neck. With a leap, she tightened the rope and killed the creature. Staring at Keenan's lifeless body on the ground, Azrael was overcome with grief and rage. Picking up the shotgun from the ground, she decided to return to the camp to avenge him. Under the cover of night, Azrael sneaked into Miriam's room, prepared to kill the terrifying woman. However, seeing Miriam's pregnant belly, she hesitated. While Azrael wavered, Miriam suddenly attacked. Despite being heavily pregnant, Miriam moved with surprising agility and knocked Azrael unconscious. When Azrael awoke, she found herself trapped in a crude wooden box. Miriam ordered her men to seal the lid, and Azrael assumed she was about to be buried alive. To her surprise, there was an oil lamp and a tunnel at her feet. Uncertain where the tunnel led, Azrael grabbed the lamp and crawled forward. She crawled for what felt like an eternity, eventually hearing the sound of wind and quickening her pace, believing she was nearing an exit. But as she turned a corner, she was horrified to find a monster in the tunnel. It turned out the tunnel wasn't meant for Azrael's escape, but was a pathway for the monsters. Azrael quickly turned back, but the end of the tunnel led back to the box. She was trapped. Just as she thought she was doomed, something bizarre happened. The monster didn't attack her. Instead, it sniffed her hand repeatedly before suddenly retreating. Looking at her hand, Azrael remembered how Miriam's blood had splattered on her during their earlier fight. A chilling thought crossed her mind. Could Miriam's unborn child be connected to the monsters? Though still unsure of the truth, Azrael didn't linger. She pried open the wooden box lid, escaped the pit, and stared at the camp in the distance, formulating her revenge. She set the camp ablaze, hiding in the shadows to ambush the survivors. When Josephine rushed to extinguish the fire, Azrael shot her from the darkness. Chaos erupted in the camp as the survivors scrambled to put out the fire, oblivious to the ambush. By the time they realized something was wrong, only one survivor remained. The last man standing searched desperately for the intruder, unaware that Azrael was right behind him. After eliminating everyone in the camp, Azrael grabbed a machete and headed straight for Miriam's quarters. Azrael burst into Miriam's room, only to find Miriam waiting for her. The two clashed fiercely until Miriam's water suddenly broke. Forced to abandon the fight, Miriam retreated to a corner to give birth. Azrael hesitated to kill her, and as she lingered, the sound of a baby's cry filled the room. Miriam picked up the machete and shockingly ended her own life. When Azrael approached to investigate, she was met with a horrifying sight. Miriam had given birth to a goat-headed, human-bodied monster. The infant's cries echoed through the forest, drawing swarms of monsters to the camp. It turned out that the crazy Miriam actually took the initiative to unite with the monster and gave birth to a brand new monster. Holding the monstrous baby in her arms, Azrael noticed the monsters didn't attack her. Instead, they let out excited howls. It was clear that this was only the beginning of the monster's story. The movie ends here, leaving viewers on the edge of their seats. This concludes the full plot of the 2024 thriller, Azrael. That's it for today's share. See you next time.